Are you looking to choose the perfect offshore fishing boat? You're like debating with yourself because, you know, Professor, there's a lot of choices.
It is.
There's a lot of choices. Well, in this video, we're going to try to get like deep. We're going to give you all the tips because we have a sport fishing boat. We've got other boats that we've owned. We've gone down this journey of trying to choose the right offshore fishing boat. And so we're gonna try to hit them all in this video. And by the end of this video, hopefully you're gonna have a very clear sense of some things that you should be thinking about that you might not have thought about. And oh, by the way, if you own a boat, we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So Professor, let's get into it right now. All right, Professor, number one consideration when it comes to picking your offshore fishing boat, this could be obvious, but tell us.
Your wallet.
Your wallet.
Right.
There's a quantum leap between what would be a production boat
Oh yeah.
and a sport fishing boat. Custom fishing boat. Why the quantum leap? Which, by the way, we've got other videos on this, so you probably wanna watch some of those. But why is there such a quantum leap?
Well, it's just quality of boat. I mean, a lot of people will probably get a lot of comments about that too, but in my opinion, there's nothing like a cold molded boat.
To that though, you might not need that if you're going, you know, a few miles offshore and you're in Key West, right? I mean, it's like one of those things. Here in North Carolina, if you're gonna be running charters offshore, you pretty much have to. You don't see anybody running a center console offshore charter from the Nags Head area of North Carolina for the most part. You almost don't see it. Whereas, if you go down to Louisiana,
oh yeah,
everybody there is running center consoles, right? So it's very different.
We're traveling a lot further. In my opinion, the weather's a little bit more predictable down there.
Yeah.
You know, you don't here in a matter of 10 minutes, the weather can change, you know, and be just unpredictable and calm, and especially with the elements. So.
But when it comes to like an offshore fishing boat, we talk about wallets. I mean, really these days, it seems like everything is starting at $250,000 and above, just for a new vessel and going its way up. Now for used, you might find a little bit less than that, but you got to be in that mentality. You can go much higher. And a lot of these offshore center consoles now are even in that $1 million range too, which is pretty wild. Okay, so number one is wallet. All right, let's go to the second one. How about, we'll call this one defining your fishing needs, Professor, because this really varies all over the U.S., doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, it all depends on what you're interested in and what you're going to be targeting, which species, because a lot of different boats are set up a lot of different ways. Just like this boat is not ideal for anchoring and fishing that way, because we don't really have a bow pulpit that we can put an anchor off of. You know what I mean? That could be a modification, but
this boat is designed to troll.
It is, yeah.
And that's what we're mainly doing here. Whereas somebody else, if they're, let's say in the Northeast, I'm just being hypothetical, you see a lot of the boats in the Northeast, they have less of a V, you know, in terms of hull design, flatter bottom, but they're better on the drift. You know, we don't really do drift fishing here.
They have a keel, and they draw more water, but they rock less when they're sitting on anchor or at drift.
Right. So that's a big consideration that you want to make, and you want to understand there's a reason why, geographically speaking, the boats change dramatically throughout the U.S. Yes, sometimes it's just preferred style, but oftentimes there's a reason while everybody tends to lean towards a style or a type of boat.
Yeah, and the style just didn't pop up. It's for a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, in conjunction with this, fishing location in general really does drive what type of boat you're gonna choose. Yeah. I mean, it is wild how you know, you see classifications. The Northeast has its own like, you know, what are they called in the down east? Down east boats, right? And then you come to the Outer Banks, and we've got mostly the Carolina Flare, those sport fishing boats that you mainly see. You get down to Florida, in that whole arena, that's the center console, like capital of the world.
Right.
And then a lot of those Louisiana boats have cats that they're running out on that are center consoles. But, you know, it's like it's just it's a wild mix.
Yeah, but if you look at
aluminum boats in the Northwest.
Yeah, if you look at each geographical location, the style of boats, there's a reason for that.
Yeah, there is a reason, and it makes a difference, right? And we talked a little bit about hull design, but when somebody is like thinking about offshore and hull design, what's the impact of the hull design? You got your deep V's, you got your cats, you got your modified V's. Like, what should be going through their mind if they're looking at hulls?
Well, how far they're traveling, what kind of weather are they expecting to fish in?
Yep.
You know what I mean? How frequently they're going to fish, and what kind of load they're going to be carrying.
And where we are in North Carolina, everybody's pretty much like DV.
Yeah.
At least if
entry, anyway.
Yeah.
Entry.
The reason for that is?
Well, because we just have huge seas here. But 90% of these boats are almost flat at the back.
Yeah.
Because we're running in and out of this inlet. We don't have a lot of water. So it drafts the minimum amount of water, and we're still able to get in and out.
Ah, that's an important component.
Very important.
And so for many of these, famous boat builders that are in the Wanchese area, the Outer Banks area, the inlets are dictating boat design as much as the fishing itself.
Correct. The Carolina flare, when we're crossing the bar, when those waves are breaking, it shears those waves off.
Right.
But there's reasons.
So let's talk about engines for a second. Single versus dual. What's some arguments there?
Well, I mean, again, wallet.
That definitely makes a difference.
Makes a difference, a big difference, but it all depends on the boat, whether it needs 2 engines to power it, and whether it needs the maneuverability that comes along with 2 engines. And even still, the maneuverability part, I mean, they've come a long way with bow thrusters and even stern thrusters and stuff like that. So if your boat is set up for a single engine, there's still other ways that you can be maneuverable. But just me personally, I mean, I know you save money with a single engine boat, but there's always that scare in my head, that thought, what happens if something happens to that engine, or, that I don't have the spare part to be able to fix or to know how to fix. I've always got that other to get me home.
Yeah, you strand your customers. Like, it's not a good feeling. But it's nice to know you can always get home.
Yeah.
Here in North Carolina area, in the Outer Banks area, the majority of these sport fishing boats have twin engines, but there are some that do have singles, and they're more economical from a fuel consumption standpoint, correct?
Yeah, it's correct. And the captain and the mate are those guys that have those single engine boats, they can pretty much fix anything besides a catastrophic failure at sea. They're very comfortable in us.
Right, which I'm sure is a big factor in this. And I would think too, if you were down in Miami, let's say, and if you're only running 3 or 4 miles offshore every single day, you're probably going to have a single. Yeah. There's no reason not to.
Unless your boat requires to.
Yeah, unless your boat requires to. So that was a good one there. So then you've got the debate of cabin versus center console, or even in our world of sport fishing boats, express versus convertible. It is fascinating how, and even the styles of these offshore boats have evolved over the last 30, 40 years. You see changing as well. You see a lot of walk-around boats. You don't see a lot of walk-arounds anymore. Mm-hmm. Those cabin style, production boats. And so what are your thoughts on the cabin versus center console and that whole argument?
Well, and again, it's really up to the fisherman's needs and what kind of weather he's going to be in, and what kind of crew he's going to have. If your wife and kids, let's say you have a wife and kids, and you're going to be fishing with them all the time, your wife's definitely going to need a place to use the bathroom out of the weather. The kids might need to lay down or something like that. So that kind of dictates whether you need a cabin boat or something like that. But if just your hard-head buddies, and you don't mind wearing oilskins if it rains or if it's really rough, you know what I mean? You're kind of hardcore.
Yeah.
Center console boat,
Right.
And you can go pretty much anywhere you want.
What's interesting is the further north you go, the less center consoles per capita as a whole, right?
Climate has a lot to do.
Climate has a huge amount. You go to the Northeast, you're not, there's just not a ton of center consoles out there. You go to Florida, like 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
Center consoles.
It's warm, you know what I mean?
You take Virginia, where we grew up on the bay, you see a mix, right? Because the climate is more of a mixed climate. You know, if you're going to be fishing just during the summertime, you probably only want a center console or a dual console. But if you're going to be doing a lot of striped bass fishing during the wintertime, well, then it's really, really nice to have that cabin. You see a lot of people that are freezing their tails off on the Chesapeake Bay looking for a rockfish. And, you know, that's because they're in the center console. So that's certainly one thing that you want to consider. So consider what type of boat, but also consider the seasonality of that as well, okay? Live well capacity and just general storage.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I mean, if you're gonna be doing a lot of live bait, you want to make sure you got the live well capacity.
What's interesting is we don't have a live well.
No, we don't. I've actually got a 55-gallon drum rigged up that very few occasions we do need live bait. We have to do it that way, but it's not an every day or an every month thing, you know. You
go down to Florida, that's a live bait industry.
Oh yeah.
Everybody is live bait fishing. You come here to the Outer Banks and you just don't see it. Why is that? Even
up north, you know, there's still a lot of live bait that goes on there. But we just dead bait here. You know what I mean? It's two is the problem with our sharks that we have, because the live bait would not stand a chance if we're sitting still trying to float a live bait or something like that. But it's not standard practice here.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going with this here. Rod holder placement and fishing space in general. That does vary quite a bit. You know, I've seen a lot of center consoles that, let's say the console goes so far back and then you got your rods and suddenly you look at your actual cockpit area and it's almost non-existent. So this is one of those considerations that you want to make.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing fishing for a lot of different species, it requires a lot of different setups as far as your rods. So that all should be dialed into your thinking, you know, as far as your needs.
Comfort features, right? Yeah. Comfort features being, let's just talk about having a head, especially if there's females on the boat, them being able to relieve themselves, because us men, you know, we get to cheat, but the ladies don't give that up. They don't get that opportunity to do that. That's a pretty big consideration, would you say?
Very much so.
Which is why most of the center consoles now that are 30 and above, they've got some type of, like within the console itself, they got some type of privacy head that people can use.
They're figuring out all kinds of, you know, nifty ways to put a head in the consoles of these nozzles.
Big one to consider. Trailerable versus Marina kept.
Oh yeah.
We've actually talked about this in another video, Professor. What are your thoughts there?
Well, again, it all depends. If you want to be mobile, like for years, I fished the Chesapeake Bay and down here, and I needed a boat that was mobile where I could fish on the bay, tote down here, and be offshore fishing. You know what I mean? It's something to be said about that.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that, and you know, it's oftentimes this does come down to budget, of course, right? But you know, not everybody, it doesn't make sense or can afford to keep their boat at a marina. Right. You will use your boat more if it is kept at a marina.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I've found myself, you know, loading the stuff on and off the boat and hooking the truck up, and if it's just sitting at the marina in the water, you're more than likely to go jump in it.
Yeah, oh, there's no question about that. All right, keeping going with this, new versus used. That's always a conversation, you know, and you know, that's a big one in the industry. Just any quick thoughts on that, new versus used, for somebody looking at an offshore fishing boat? This boat we bought used. You bought center console, that was used. Yeah. I bought essentially what was a new Steiger craft. In my situation, you know, what do you think? I mean, there's pros and cons.
There are pros and cons. Normally with a new boat, they come with a weight. And from any good boat, reputable boat manufacturer, there's going to be a weight. Sometimes there's not. You buy one, but you might not get all the options on it that you want. In order to do that, you might have to wait for one to be built for you.
Especially if you're going sport fish, then you're going to be waiting significant time.
Oh yeah, definitely a wait with those. But A used boat, there's nothing wrong with them. A lot of people take great care of their boats, but just it's one of those things. Buyer beware. You know what I mean? You need to make sure you do your homework. Have somebody survey the boat that really knows. If you don't, have the engines gone through, by a mechanic.
Because
sample.
that's going to affect your warranty as well,
Of course.
right? And warranty, especially with these engines, that's a pretty significant thing to think about. It's like, you want to have the warranty, you want to have the workmanship, which leads us to a big point that you want to consider. A lot of people don't consider this when buying an offshore boat or any boat in general, and that is, do you have someone locally that can service your boat and your engines?
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of like a group of contractors for your house. You have different people that specialize in different trades, and it's the same way with a boat. You know what I mean? You got to have an engine guy. You got to have a bottom guy, a wheel guy. You got to have all.
You need your guy.
Yeah, you got to have all these guys for these things. And just because there are people out there in that trade doesn't mean that they'll come work on your boat. So you need to make sure you make the proper arrangements before.
I've seen a situation where somebody bought a used boat, traveled a long ways for it, got it, brought it back, were excited, but then suddenly realized nobody worked on that particular engine locally.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's an issue.
That's an issue. And you're going to feel really frustrated if you get in that situation.
Yeah.
So just be super cognizant of that. That's definitely one to think about it. Even if, this is hypothetically, and it's like, you get a boat with a seakeeper, but there's no seakeeper person within, 75 miles of you. You're like, dang on, if I ever have an issue with my seakeeper, you're going to be traveling a long ways to get that boat serviced. These are just things to think about. Fuel efficiency is a big one, Professor.
Yeah.
And a couple thoughts on this. The moment you get two engines, you spend a lot more on fuel.
Correct.
You get the benefits of the speed or the safety or just, maneuverability, but you're going to spend a lot more on fuel. And this is, even if you have decent money, I still think like you're aware of the fact that, man, I am just burning the fuel right now. You go from a single, let's say 200, 250, that's getting 2 to 3 miles per gallon, right? On a classic outboard to, you could drop to that 1 to 2 on a twin. Like if I know on my Steigercraft that's got twin 300s, I'm burning like 1.4 when I'm cruising. So there's a big difference. I'm now spending more than twice as much on fuel than I was before.
Right.
And can I afford it? Yeah, but it still makes you think twice. And sometimes it's not nice. Like, you don't want to think twice. You just want to go. Yeah. You want to take that trip. That's, just want to go.
And another thing, you don't want that to dictate how much you use your boat.
Right.
You know what I mean? So essentially, if you have to think about the fuel consumption, it's that big a deal to you.
Might not be the right boat.
Might not be the right boat.
Yeah, and you really got to ask yourself that.
Even though you want to be cognizant of your fuel burn, but it's just one of them things. Along with the boat comes the fuel burn.
Our boat here on a typical day burns, costs us how much in fuel right now, with diesel being whatever it is right now?
We burn about 160 to 180 a day.
Yeah, so we're spending about $600 to $700 or something like that. Sometimes on the upper $500 range, but $550 to $700 is what we're spending. And so it's like, okay, you just got to have that mindset. You got to be prepared. You got to be ready. You got to be ready for that. And then I think the final one is, as we're talking about money, it's just, and I know we started here, we'll end here, just ownership costs in general.
Yeah.
So we have talked to so many people that were shocked at what it costs to maintain a boat after they bought it, because they're not thinking about necessarily dock fees, ongoing maintenance fees, just all the things that come with it. In the world of sport fishing, that goes way up. But even still, the center console, it can be very surprising how much it costs to maintain it. Insurance alone, and get a quote on insurance. It's going to be more than you probably think it's going to be.
That's right.
So all these things add up. Just looking back at mine, Professor, with my Steigercraft, the one regret that I have is I didn't get something long enough that was really perfect for the ocean. And it was only It's called a 28, but it's more like a 26, 27 hull. So it's a Steigercraft 28, but it's, you know, really going to the back of the engines. If I had to go back and do it over again, I would want to get something that was at least 30 feet long for the ocean, because it just skips along better. That was a great boat once we got out onto the grounds, but getting it out to the grounds was a bit of a struggle. Yeah. And so that's why if you can take it for a test.
It was very important.
Yeah. You want to do that, get a sense for the ride. These things matter. These things matter.
Yeah.
You know, what's crazy is this wasn't even all encompassing. I mean, we just talked a lot, like we just listed like 15 different factors or whatever it is. This is why it's not uncommon to research a boat for a year or two before you find the right thing.
And I could go on and on and on. I mean, there's several different variables and factors about all that. So, I mean, it's a lot to consider when you're trying to choose the right boat.
Yeah, so if you have further considerations, leave it in the comment section, or if you have any like mistakes that you made when you chose your offshore fishing boat and you're like, man, I really wish I would have done this or known this, put that in the comment section as well. We would love to hear from you. And of course, we'd love to have you out here with us on Speechless. You can check us out, speechlesssportfishing.com. Come and have a trip of a lifetime with this guy. And until the next time, everyone, stay salty.